Colin White, Kathleen Willis, and our illustrious chair, Anne Tremblay, who is here, but I'm taking over as chair for this evening. So my name is Scott Hindle, and I'll be taking care of you, or taking the lead this evening. So this is an agenda which appeared on the screen before we began are the applications that we will be hearing today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. For the hearing today, and to save time and to ensure a thorough review of applications, we as committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions that were made in advance. Today, we're going to hear oral submissions from any interested parties. The committee may ask for a brief presentation from applications and applicants to explain what's being requested, followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. For applications that the committee is comfortable with already, we may not need a presentation. We'll jump straight into questions. So when it's your application, or we open the floor to public comments, and if you'd like to make a comment or submission to the committee, raise your hand in Zoom and the committee coordinator will let you into the virtual hearing room. Note that there is a small delay to bringing you into the hearing. That's totally normal. For those on the phone, raise your hand by pressing *9 and toggle mute and unmute with *6. When I call on you, please start with your name, spelling it if necessary, and provide your municipal address for the record. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes, and any exceptions to that will be at my discretion. I remind you to be respectful, mute yourself when not speaking, and avoid speaking to issues that are beyond this committee's narrow mandate. This includes things like aspects of the proposal that do not require variances, noise, pollution, property maintenance, and property values. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. If necessary, I'll administer a formal oath here on the floor by reading out a question to the applicant. You just have to respond with "I swear" or "I affirm." There's no legal difference between the responses. Swearing confirms your declaration against God or to God, versus affirming, which is against your conscience. If there are any edits or clarifications to the details of the application, I'll read those out and ask the applicants or the agent to confirm that the changes are correct. If you have questions or concerns about the proposed conditions outlined in the planning staff report, it's best to raise those early. Finally, a written decision from today's hearing will be issued within 10 days and is subject to a 20-day appeal period. If you'd like a copy of the decision, please contact committee staff. So then, proceeding with the agenda for this evening, we'll start. I'll ask if there are any declarations of interest from the panel members for either applications before this panel or others throughout the week. No? Okay, seeing none. And we don't have any minutes this evening to deal with. We'll go into adjournments then, and I understand that 75 Allen, so that's items 1 and 2, have a request to adjourn. So we will bring that one forward. I think I'm looking for the agent, Deborah Belfi.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
I understand you're looking to adjourn to deal with some items from, I think it's from the conditions that were raised in the planning report.
Yes, that's correct. We wanted to make sure that, in particular, the stormwater management condition, that there weren't going to be any changes needed to any of the design of the house or the site location, and we needed some more time to do that.
Okay.
I had been hoping we could adjourn to July 20th.
July 20th. We'll get the coordinator, the secretary treasurer, to confirm, but I think that should be fine.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there should be space on that agenda.
Perfect. Okay, and then are you anticipating any changes that might include additional variances or anything, or is that still be determined as part of the review?
No, I Um, I don't believe there will be any changes, but the engineer has to do some work on it. So I do understand that if there were additional variances, that there would have to be a recirculation. But I don't. Our aim is not to have any more.
Okay. No, and that's fine. You've got a little bit of time then if that's needed. But okay. Would anyone here in attendance like to speak either for or against this adjournment request? No, seeing none. And I'm assuming no one from the committee has any concerns? No, similarly seeing none. I guess we'll look for a vote to adjourn then to July 20th. All in favor? All right, we're unanimous, so we'll adjourn and we'll see you again on July 20th.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so continuing with, I think it's semis night here at the committee. Everything here is either a long semi or a traditional semi. So I think we'll jump into application number 3. That's 848 Norton.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Stegretto. I think I have an oath that I need to talk you through. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do swear.
Perfect. Okay, so I don't think we need a presentation on this one, but I'll open the floor to members of the committee if there's any questions. No? Okay, seeing none, I'll then open the floor to members of the public. If there's anyone that would like to speak either for or against this application, please raise your hand and we'll hear you out. Okay, fairly straightforward. Seeing none, I think we can jump straight into a vote then. All in favor of the consent application? All right, Mr. Segreto, you have a unanimous approval. And,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you again.
Quick and easy. I think we'll jump now to item number 6. That's 1128 Parisien.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Daou. Well, I have an oath declaration to walk you through. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I affirm.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
So I think similarly, I don't think we'll require a presentation on this, but I'll open up the floor to questions from committee members. No, none. Okay, I just had a quick question. I know there was a question raised about the site triangle. I understand that there's no concerns with that in this case.
It's my understanding that there are no concerns from the city's perspective with the corner site triangle, given there are right-of-way protections along both Parisian and Lewis. We've placed the corner site triangle at the future lot line, so it's a 3x3 corner site triangle taken from the future lot line when the right-of-way protection is taken, to accommodate for any potential issues in the future.
Okay, so this proposal kind of aligns with that future potential so that if or when that happens, there's no problems.
That's exactly correct, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I think that's all I had. So I'll open up questions or comments to the public. So if there's anyone that would like to speak either for or against this application, raise your hand and we'll bring you in. No. Okay, I don't have anyone on my speakers list. Oh, Mr. White, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about that site triangle. I gather that it's not being taken as a condition of this this application. What is the mechanism going to be to acquire it in the future? Is that going to be purchased from the property owner, or is it going to otherwise be acquired, or is there an agreement already in place to have that acquired by the city?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the intention for these properties is to sever them in the future. So through quite a bit of discussion with city planning staff, it was agreed that it was easier and simpler to proceed with the minor variance applications first on the basis of the existing lot conditions, taking into consideration the right-of-way protection and corner site triangles, and then the conveyance of those would be dealt with through the future severance process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, yeah, and I note that you provided kind of a draft R plan as part of your planning evidence, so that's super helpful. Great. Okay, well, seeing no other hands raised, I think we can go to a vote on this item. All those in favor of the minor variances according to this application? Perfect. Okay, so we have a unanimous approval then, Ms. Daou. Any questions or concerns?
None from me. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. You too. Thanks.
All right. And now in record speed, I think we'll go to items number 4 and 5. That's 326 Frontenac. There's Mr. Hume. Perfect. So I'll jump straight into the declaration. That's for you to do, Mr. Hume.
Yes, I swear or affirm.
I gotta read it just to be sure, but we'll take that. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, as instructed, and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I swear or affirm and affirm.
Perfect. Yeah, you gotta start recording that just so I can hit go at any time. Perfect. So Mr. Hume, I think we're gonna ask for just a quick presentation. If you could just walk us through it.
Sure.
There's enough little complexities with it. Yep. And then we'll go from there.
Okay. I knew when you were moving me to the last item, I was up for a presentation.
It's usually a good sign. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I have a presentation for you. This is a property located at 326 Frontenac Street. It's in between, there we go. It's in between MacArthur Avenue and Montreal Road, and I'll get to its location in a minute. It's 3 long semis on individual lots. It comprises 6, in total 6 2-bedroom units and 6 1-bedroom units. The lot as it sits today is 28 meters wide, but it's very shallow. It's only 25 meters deep. And currently on the site is quite a large house and a big parking lot, which you'll see in a minute. And when you look back at air photos, you can see that the property is relatively unchanged since air photos, 1958. And you can see that it most likely had an industrial or a I guess a working shop at one time. So we circulated. So when we installed the sign, we circulated to our neighbors our designs, because we know that the committee is interested in that. And we only received, I think, one response from the neighbor directly across the street, which was supportive of our application. So if you want to go to the next slide, have the draft site plan. So We need a lot width, lot area, rear yard, depth, and area minor variances. The zoning is an R4 UA, and for long semi-detached dwellings, that's a lot width of 10 meters and a lot area of 300 square meters. So you can see we're very close to the lot width calculation. We're not providing any parking, and that was the applicant is a strong believer in active transportation and has decided that that these units, whether they be for sale or for rent, will not have parking provided to them. So that gave us some flexibility in dealing with the shallowness of the lot when it came to creating units of an appropriate size for the development. If you want to go to the next slide, you can see these are the lot widths, very close to the 10 meters that's required by the zoning bylaw. And as you know, the zoning bylaw looks at, if this were an individual parcel with a long semi on it, you would have a 3-meter driveway and a 7-meter building form and side yard. So with the buildings as we're proposing them, very consistent with what you would see without in an environment where there is no driveway, taking advantage of the lot to manage that shallowness, if you will. So we have three, they're almost close to 10 meters, 9.3, 9.28, and 9.45. Where you really are going to get where the challenge takes place is the shallowness of the lots means the lots become quite small, for lack of a better, as it relates to the zoning bylaw. And that might be a problem, but because we're not providing parking, not providing a drive aisle or parking spaces or anything like that, we preserve that area for amenity space. So in actuality, although we're asking for a variance because to customize the rear yards, the lot doesn't need to be big enough to accommodate those cars and those requirements. So you can get an appropriate development with an appropriate rear yard amenity area within the lot area that's proposed. We can go to the next slide. So as you can see, this is the rear yard of the proposed dwellings, and the lot areas. We're required to have 25% of the lot area, and we're very close at 23 and change. And the lot depth is 7.5 meters if we were to go by the standard zoning bylaw, and we're very close to that, at only 1.6 meters shy in the 5.9 meter range. And again, none of our rear yard is taken up by what would pretty standard parking. So, we're able to ensure that if you were to compare this to sort of a standard, our green space and sodded and treat area would be very similar to what you would see in a standard development. So if you want to go to the next one. So this is where it actually is, if just to place you in some neighborhood context. MacArthur Avenue is to the south and Montreal Road is to the north. And it really is actually 400 meters, a 400-meter walk to either MacArthur or Montreal Road in a transit. And both of those are transit priority corridors in the new official plan, and we'll have enhanced public transit on them. And they're very close to Montreal Road is, MacArthur has a large grocery store within walking distance to the development. So very close to the amenities along Montreal Road. And I say amenities, it's very close to the liquor store. so that's, I say, when I'm looking at a development in my own life, it's how far is it to the liquor store and how far is it to the grocery store?
Priorities, I get it.
Yeah. So if you want to go to the next slide, we'll give you some just a bit of. So on your left-hand side, that's the eastern side. Those are two apartment buildings, two 6-unit apartment buildings. And what I don't show you is the apartment building on the far left actually is almost the entire lot. It has no rear yard, and we'll show you. You can kind of see that in the picture below it, where you see the pickup truck. That's the edge of that building, and abutting that building is a parking lot for that 6-unit building. So in the middle too is the subject property, the garage, as you can see, the parking area, and then the house itself. And to the right of the screen is our neighboring property. Below that is looking into our neighbor's rear yard, which is our eastern neighbor's rear yard at the bottom, and that's a parking lot. The picture in the middle is looking back into the back of our neighbor along that fence, and as you can see to the right is the rear yard as it exists today, and you can see just beyond that our neighbor's parking lot. So that's sort of the street front context. If you want to go to the next slide, on the other side of the street, and I had better pictures than this. Unfortunately, I had a phone challenge that I couldn't get them all off there. So these aren't the greatest, but I can tell you the typology is the same. They're all single family homes across the street, well landscaped. The one in the middle is directly across the street from the subject development. And as I indicated, we sent flyers to all of the neighbors up and down the street, and we received a very nice letter or email from the neighbor on your just on your left here in the beige bungalow with supporting the proposed application. If you want to go to the next slide. So really, it's about the 4 tests, right? So the 4 tests with, as it relates to lot width, does it maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan? The official plan supports low-rise development in this context. So I would say it does. The intent of the zoning bylaw is to have lots that would be able to comfortably accommodate the proposed development at a 9-meter lot width. These are certainly comfortable along this streetscape, and in sort of the primary characteristic of the intent would be to have a building and a driveway. We're foregoing that driveway, so we believe that we meet that intent. Is it appropriate and desirable? We believe that this development is an improvement upon the existing conditions, so we believe it is appropriate. Both the zoning bylaw and the OP contemplate this sort of development. Is the request minor? We believe that in the context of long semi-detached, variations to the 10-meter width is the minor when you consider you're not consuming space for driveways and parking. for tests in the reduced lot area, again, the proposal is ground-oriented housing. Ground-oriented housing is generally in the context is permitted and encouraged in this area. The official plan looks at things like overlook and how it would intrusion into surrounding context. And I would argue that there is really no intrusion into the parking lots of either side of the development. Does the proposal maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? I think the lot area, when you subtract off the requirements for parking, is this would the intent was to be able to provide a lot that could comfortably accommodate the proposed dwellings, and I think that this does that. Is appropriate. When you're moving from a much hard surface and you're replacing garages. There's a bad spelling error there. Sorry about that. I'm just seeing that now. I think it is the development is appropriate. Is it minor? I think in the context it is. If we were trying to shoehorn in parking and other into the development, I think that there would be an argument, but in the case that we're proposing here, I think that it is minor. And with respect to the rear yard, again, ground-oriented, is there appropriate space for amenities? There is, in my opinion. And, amenities are changing in that it's just not backyards. It's now, front yards where people, so they're using the spaces in a much different context. But it still maintains the intent of the official plan. The zoning bylaw seeks to create areas where there's grass and sod and trees and passive amenity spaces. And I believe that that the general intent is maintained in the proposal we brought forward. I believe that it is desirable, and it's relatively minor change to the minor change or deviation from the standards of the bylaw. I think that would be all that I would have, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Hume. I just note staff had added kind of at the last minute an 8th condition about installation of barrier curb. Any concerns with that?
No, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming that they're adding the barrier curb to make sure that our the principle that we have spouted about active transportation is maintained, and that cars don't sneak in there, and we're very comfortable with that.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine you'll have to do curb cuts anyway to do all of the servicing. So
yes, yeah, you're correct.
Shouldn't be that big of a difference. And then also, as part of your presentation, you mentioned kind of a previous commercial use and that kind of thing. Do you have any concerns about environmental and site contamination issues that might affect us?
When you've been out to the site, it's I don't have contamination concerns. It is it's just when you look, it's hard to determine actually what it is, but what went on at that site. But you can see it as a site where you used to have the milkman parking there would start out on their route. Things like that is what you kind of envision would happen. But no, I don't. I think the site needs to be cleaned up. That's for sure. But I don't believe that there's any contamination in the manner that I think you're thinking of, like a garage or a welding shop. There was no indication of that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious because there are OP and zoning policies around that may impact your ability. But if staff didn't raise it as a concern, it doesn't seem like it. So perfect. All right, I'll open up the floor to members of the committee. Ms. Willis, go ahead.
Yes, this is directed initially to Mr. Hume, but I may ask staff to clarify. Mr. Hume, I understand that this is going to be 3 lots, but there will be 6 units, such that the rear units are not being severed from the front units. So I'm wondering what the purpose of the joint use and maintenance agreement that it gives a bunch of language which may be standard about sewer laterals, common party walls, that sort of thing, when in fact, at this point in time, there would be none of those. I'm just wondering if the only thing is to combine the 2 1.2 meter wide pedestrian walkways into a 2.4 meter wide pedestrian walkway for the benefit of 4 of the units, 2 of the units, I guess.
Yeah. So I see a joint use and maintenance agreement fairly regularly as a sort of a standard condition. And I'm assuming that what they were looking for was a joint use and maintenance agreement for that pathway, which is similar to what you would see if it was a driveway, right? So
in fact, 1.2 meters wide is a standard rear yard catch basin easement. So you could have them completely independent at this point in time.
Absolutely, you could.
So there is no intention at this point in time to sever the rear portion from the front portion of the units?
Not at this time. I mean, that's a possibility. And the only reason I hesitate is because I haven't yet seen the servicing strategy, and the ability to sever may be constrained by the ability to service down those laterals. It may be possible, but we're not there. We're not at a point where we could say to you, yeah, you know what, when they're built, we're going to be coming back to you and asking you to sever those rear units.
I guess that's sort of where I'm going with this is, if it turns out that you're going to have separate service laterals into the front and the back, then that's a clear indication that at some point in time there's going to be a severance contemplated. I'm just wondering why it's not, if that's the thinking, and whether if it results in any sort of a flag going up if you're requesting double service connections into each of the 3 units.
Yeah,
3 dwellings, not dwelling units.
right. I can't tell you how the servicing is going to go right now, and it would be so the only place that it's going to be able to go is under the concrete path between 2 of them and down the concrete servicing on the other side because of the window wells that we're showing on the site plan for so we'd have trouble, I think, down the window wells. But at this time we're not proposing to service that at the back. We may it's very common to do that, typically for financing purposes. The banks like to see individual units to be able to ascribe value to those individual units, but we're not there quite yet.
Then I'd just like to follow up with a question of staff in that regard. If whose is this? Ms. Bauer?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chair. I am actually a staff member representing this staff report tonight, as Ms. Bauer can't be here.
Okay, so yeah. Hi. Just a question for you. Given that there are only 3 severances here, if the application, a building permit application was filed and it showed separate services into the rear units, would that be approved, or would it not be approved on the basis that these are not supposed to be severed at this point?
I believe that they would not be approved, or they would check with planning staff to understand what approvals are in place, or if there's any pending severance applications for the severance of the long semi.
Okay.
So
okay.
I don't, not to correct.
Go for it, Peter. It's okay.
I think that you would service those units separately.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't service them on a, You can service them on a common trench. It's not usual. Usually you would bring the one set in the front of the building and one set down down the side to the rear unit.
But in that instance, no joint use and maintenance agreement would be required because it's all under one ownership.
Right.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
I would, as you guys might know, Committee of Adjustment is not where I usually am doing my planning. So
Welcome to our world.
yeah, thank you.
Great. Yeah, and I think in this case too, the flag portion on a severance, I think the requirement is now, I think, 1.7 meters.
That's correct.
So
Yeah.
at the 1.2 that's proposed, you may not even be able to get there without substantial variances in that case.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns from members of the committee? Mr. White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question with respect, well, actually, I've got a couple of questions, but first one with respect to the adjacent property to the east. I believe I'm correct, Mr. Hume, those are the apartment, essentially some kind of apartment buildings, and they have, am I correct that they have parking in the rear?
So, yeah, there are two apartment buildings. The closest one has a parking lot in the rear. The furthest one away, if you will, doesn't have any parking in the rear. The building consumes almost the entire lot.
I'm just wondering about there's no interconnection between your property and this adjacent property in terms of access to that parking. So I'm
No.
assuming they have their own independent access.
Yes,
that
they do,
parking
between the
that's-
buildings.
Okay. Second question, I think this would be to staff, Ms. Nitschke. The community association raised a concern in their correspondence to us. I know that they're not supportive of the application, but they mentioned in their second paragraph of their letter that there appears to be no mention of, quote, front yard setback minimum aggregated soft landscaped area, percentage of the front yard area, 35%. In the case of any lot with a width between 8.25 meters but less than 12, as stipulated under R4 UA subzone, is there any issue here with respect to that concern that they've raised?
Mr. Chair, we did review it briefly. While it wasn't a requested variance, I did review the zoning. I think it's important to note that the walkway that's provided, while it's not soft, can be included within the soft landscaping calculation. And so Peter can probably confirm, but I did not have any concerns when I did review that it would fall under that 35%. So we do not have any concerns.
Right. Almost the entire front, I'm going to say almost the entire front portion is available to meet that landscaped requirement, and we do in all cases. I don't have the number handy, but so all of the sod and the landscaping on the lot meets that requirement.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. Hume, now I noticed that there's substantial interlock in the front heading towards the side pathway and then down to the sidewalk. Is there a reason why that interlock doesn't go straight out to the sidewalk and minimize the amount of hardscape?
Just, I think it was a design intent to have more, I was going to say green, but it's not, like maybe it's less green. I just think that was a design element. So there's no reason why it couldn't.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or concerns from the panel? No? Okay, Ms. Markovich. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a couple of quick questions. I don't know if I missed it, but do you happen to have, Mr. Hume, a slide showing the kind of lotting fabric of the street? I don't know if I missed that.
No, I don't have a lot fabric for you. Depths are very common. So the 25-meter depth is a common depth along the rear, but the singles range in, they're in the 12 and 13-meter range, so that are across the street.
Okay, thank you. And maybe just one other question, if I may. So interesting to see an example of a development without parking provision. But when I think about the number of units proposed and trying to sort of do the math around how many people might be able to live there, I'm just curious, perhaps from the city's perspective, assuming that the owner does not sell or rent only to car-free households, what are the options for people if they were to move into this development in terms of provision?
Sorry, excuse me. So Mr. Chair, there is no parking required. So we do acknowledge that the zoning permits this to be developed without parking. With respect to options for parking off-site, residents could make use of on-street parking as available, or they could choose to not have a car and use transit. I understand, in reading the Vanier Community Association's letter, that they are working with the city to develop a street parking permit process, which residents may take part in if that does move forward. But from a zoning perspective, it does meet the zoning.
Thank you. I think you're on mute, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So if there's nothing else from the panel, I'll open up the floor to members of the public who may wish to speak either for or against this application. Now's your chance. Just raise your hand and happy to go forward. Okay, seeing none. Any other questions or comments you'd like to make, Mr. Hume?
No, Mr. Chair, I think it's been quite comprehensive.
Great. Okay. Then I guess question I have for members of the committee as to the level of if we want to tie this to plans or not, or if we're content with the variances and consents as presented without tying to plans specifically. Madam Tremblay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From my standpoint, I think it should be tied to plans. I think it's important to do that.
Okay. So I think I would propose then that we tie generally to plans to allow for some flexibility, potentially for the hardscaping, for instance, if there are changes to interlock and that kind of thing, but generally tying at least the footprints of the buildings and the rough elevations, if that makes sense. Any concerns there, Mr. Hume?
Mr. Chairman, we provide you with elevations. We intend to move to a building permit. So unless something really drastic happens, we're absolutely fine.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move forward on that basis, tying generally to plans. Given that I think that's the end of our public portion, so I've got, I guess, 2 votes. We'll start with the minor variances that are before us. So all those in favor of the variances as outlined? Okay, looks like we have unanimous approval. And then same question on the consents. Those in favor? Perfect. And we are unanimous once again.
Right.
So there you are, Mr. Hume, approved with generally the conditions as outlined. Sounds like there are no concerns, so I think we're good to go.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
And I guess that brings us to the close of a fairly quick and fairly efficient semis night here at the Committee of Adjustment. So I'll look for thank you to everyone who is attending and that helped us out on staff side, as well as other members here in this evening and the members of the public that chose to join. But I'll look to the other members for a motion to adjourn. I think I saw Mr. White, seconded by Ms. Willis. So perfect. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. And take advantage of the sun.